wedding dress, the vows, the promises of forever. And then, in a locked room just hours before walking down the aisle, everything shattered. A groom, his bride, his best man, and a discovery that would turn a celebration into a crime scene. This is the story of the worst wedding day in history, and trust me, you won't believe where this goes. Welcome to The Only Witness. Before we dive into this absolutely insane story, if you're new here, smash that subscribe button right now. I'm serious. Hit it. Turn on notifications because we bring you the craziest real-life stories every single week, and you do not want to miss what happens next in this one. And to everyone watching, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. Are you in the DMV, New York, Illinois, Texas, international? I want to know. Let's build this community. Now let's get into this wedding day disaster. June 15th, 2019. Charlotte, North Carolina. The mansion at Fairview is one of the most beautiful wedding venues in the state. Rolling hills, manicured gardens, a stunning white colonial mansion that looks like something out of a fairy tale. It's the kind of place where dreams come true, where couples begin their happily ever after, where families gather to celebrate love. But on this particular Saturday, the mansion at Fairview would become the scene of the most spectacular wedding disaster anyone had ever witnessed. And it all started with a bride named Jessica Morgan. Jessica was 28 years old. Blonde hair, blue eyes. The kind of woman who turned heads when she walked into a room. She worked as a marketing executive at a tech company in Charlotte, pulling in a six-figure salary. She drove a white Mercedes, lived in a luxury apartment in South End. She was ambitious, beautiful, and according to everyone who knew her, deeply in love with her fiancé. His name was Marcus Chen, 32 years old, a successful commercial real estate developer. Dark hair, athletic build, the kind of guy who looked good in a suit. Marcus came from money. His parents were immigrants from Taiwan who built a restaurant empire across the southeast. By the time Marcus was born, the family was wealthy. Very wealthy. He grew up in a mansion in Myers Park, went to private schools, graduated from Duke University. Marcus and Jessica met at a charity gala 3 years earlier. According to Jessica, it was love at first sight. Marcus was charming, generous, attentive. He sent her flowers every week, took her on surprise trips to Miami, New York, even Paris. After 18 months of dating, he proposed on a beach in the Bahamas with a 5-carat diamond ring that cost more than most people's cars. The wedding was supposed to be the event of the season, 300 guests, $100,000 budget, a celebrity wedding planner, designer dress, live band, open bar with top-shelf everything. Jessica's parents were solidly middle class, so Marcus's family paid for most of it. They spared no expense. Their only son was getting married, and they wanted it to be perfect. And Marcus's best man? That was Derek Williams, 31 years old, Marcus's best friend since college. They were roommates at Duke, pledged the same fraternity, went into business together after graduation. Derek was Marcus's right hand. His partner, his brother from another mother. They were inseparable. Derek was tall, about 6'3", with light brown skin, hazel eyes, and the kind of smile that made women weak in the knees. He worked with Marcus in the real estate business, and together they'd built a portfolio worth millions. Derek was single, always dating but never settling down. He was the eternal bachelor, the guy who showed up to every event with a different woman on his arm. When Marcus asked Derek to be his best man, Derek gave a speech at the engagement party about how Marcus was his brother and how lucky Jessica was to marry such a good man. Everyone clapped, everyone smiled, nobody suspected a thing. But here's what nobody knew: Derek and Jessica had been sleeping together for 6 months. Before we continue, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Trust me, this story is about to get absolutely wild, and you need to be subscribed so you don't miss any of our content. We drop stories like this every week. Now, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our global community. All right, let's get back to this disaster. The affair started in December 2018, 6 months before the wedding. Marcus was traveling constantly for work, sometimes gone for a week at a time, closing deals in Atlanta, Miami, Nashville. Jessica was lonely. She started texting Derek, just casual stuff at first. Then Derek started coming by her apartment to drop off things Marcus had left at the office. Then they started having lunch, then drinks after work. One night in late December, after too many glasses of wine at a hotel bar in uptown Charlotte, they kissed. And then they went upstairs to Derek's room. And that was the beginning of the end. According to Jessica's later testimony, she knew it was wrong. She knew she should stop. She knew she should call off the wedding. But she didn't. Because Marcus represented security. Marcus represented the life she'd always wanted. The mansion. The status. The money. Derek was exciting, dangerous, forbidden. But Derek wasn't offering marriage. He wasn't offering forever. He was just offering right now. So Jessica made a choice. She would marry Marcus for security, and she would keep Derek as her secret. And Derek? Derek went along with it. Why? Because Derek had his own secrets, secrets that would eventually come to light. But we'll get to that. For 6 months, they carried on. Hotel rooms when Marcus was traveling, Jessica's apartment when Marcus was out of town, quick encounters in Derek's car, in parking garages. They were reckless. They were stupid. And somehow they didn't get caught. Until the wedding day. The morning of June 15th started like any perfect wedding day should. Clear blue skies. Temperature in the mid-70s. Jessica woke up at 6 a.m. in the bridal suite at the mansion at Fairview. Her bridesmaids were already there, popping champagne, doing mimosas, blasting music. Hair and makeup artists arrived at 7. The photographer showed up at 8 to capture getting ready photos. Jessica looked radiant. Her dress was a custom Vera Wang, form-fitting with a long train and intricate lace detailing. It cost $45,000. Her hair was swept up in an elegant updo with small white flowers woven through it. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like a princess. Meanwhile, Marcus was in the groom's suite on the other side of the venue with his groomsmen. They were doing shots of whiskey, smoking cigars, laughing. Marcus was nervous but happy. This was his day. The day he'd been planning for over a year, the day he would marry the woman he loved. Derek was right there beside him, adjusting Marcus's bow tie, cracking jokes, keeping the mood light. Nobody watching them would have suspected that Derek had been sleeping with the bride. That, just hours earlier, Derek had texted Jessica saying he couldn't wait to see her in that dress, that he wished it was him waiting at the altar instead of Marcus. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m. Guests started arriving around 3:30. The venue looked like something out of a magazine. White chairs arranged in perfect rows. An arbor covered in white roses and greenery at the front. String lights hanging from the trees. A string quartet playing classical music. Jessica's parents arrived. Marcus's parents arrived. Aunts, uncles, cousins, co-workers, college friends. Everyone dressed in their finest. Everyone excited to witness Marcus and Jessica exchange vows. At 3:45, the wedding planner did a final walkthrough. Everything was perfect. The ring bearer was ready. The flower girl was ready. The bridesmaids were lined up. Marcus was at the altar with Derek by his side. All they needed was the bride. At 3:50, the wedding planner went to the bridal suite to let Jessica know it was almost time. But when she knocked on the door, there was no answer. She knocked again. Nothing. She tried the handle. Locked. "Jessica, sweetie, it's almost time. We need to start lining up," the wedding planner called through the door. No response. The wedding planner's assistant tried calling Jessica's cell phone. It rang, but went to voicemail. They tried calling the maid of honor. She answered and said Jessica had told the bridesmaids to go ahead and line up, that she needed a few minutes alone to collect herself. Totally normal. Brides get nervous. But 4 p.m. came and went. No bride. 4:05, 4:10. Guests were starting to whisper. Marcus was looking confused. His parents were exchanging concerned glances. At 4:15, the wedding planner knocked on the bridal suite door again, this time more insistently. "Jessica, honey, everyone's waiting. We really need to start." And then she heard something. A voice. No, 2 voices. Muffled. Coming from inside the room. The wedding planner pressed her ear to the door. Definitely two voices, a man and a woman. And they weren't just talking. They were arguing. No, not arguing. Something else. Before we go any further, I need you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. This story is about to take a turn you won't see coming. Seriously, subscribe right now and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Are you watching from the East Coast? West Coast? Somewhere international? Let me know. Okay, back to this absolute disaster. The wedding planner knocked harder. "Jessica, is everything okay in there?" Suddenly, silence. Complete silence. Then footsteps. Someone walking toward the door. The lock clicked. The door opened just a crack. And there was Jessica, still in her $45,000 wedding dress, her makeup slightly smudged, her hair a little messy. "I'm fine," Jessica said quickly. "Just give me 2 more minutes." But the wedding planner could see past Jessica into the room, and what she saw made her blood run cold. Derek, the best man, straightening his tie, adjusting his pants, looking guilty as hell. The wedding planner's eyes went wide. She looked at Jessica. She looked at Derek. She looked back at Jessica. "Oh my God," the wedding planner whispered. Jessica's face went pale. "It's not what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like. The wedding planner stumbled backward, her hand over her mouth. She didn't know what to do. Does she tell Marcus? Does she keep quiet? Does she cancel the wedding? Jessica stepped out of the bridal suite and grabbed the wedding planner's arm. "Please," Jessica whispered. "Please don't say anything. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Please." But it was too late, because standing right behind the wedding planner was Marcus's mother, Mrs. Chen, who had come looking for the bride to see what the delay was. And Mrs. Chen had heard everything. Mrs. Chen looked at Jessica. Then she looked past Jessica into the bridal suite and saw Derek emerging, looking sheepish and caught. "What is going on here?" Mrs. Chen demanded, her voice sharp. Jessica opened her mouth, but no words came out. Derek stepped forward. "Mrs. Chen, I can explain—" "Explain what?" Mrs. Chen's voice was getting louder. "Explain why you're in the bridal suite with my son's fiancée 30 minutes after the ceremony was supposed to start." Guests in the nearby hallway were starting to notice the commotion. People were turning, whispering, pulling out their phones. And then the worst possible person appeared at the end of the hallway, Marcus. He'd gotten worried about the delay and came looking for answers. And now he was walking toward them, confused about why his mother, his bride, his best man and the wedding planner were all standing in the hallway looking panicked. "What's going on?" Marcus asked, looking between all of them. Nobody spoke. The silence was deafening. Marcus looked at his mother. "Mom, what's wrong?" Mrs. Chen's face was stone. She pointed at the bridal suite. "Ask them." Marcus looked at Jessica, really looked at her, saw her smudged makeup, her messy hair, her guilt-stricken face. Then he looked at Derek, his best friend, his brother. And Derek couldn't meet his eyes. And in that moment, Marcus knew. "No," Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper. "No, no, no." Jessica reached for him. "Marcus, please, let me explain." "Don't touch me!" Marcus roared, jerking away from her. The hallway went silent. Everyone froze. Marcus looked at Derek. "How long?" Derek said nothing. "How long?" Marcus screamed. 6 months, Jessica whispered, tears streaming down her face. 6 months, half a year, while Marcus was planning a wedding, while he was putting deposits on venues and tasting cakes and writing vows, while he was imagining his future with this woman, she was sleeping with his best friend. Marcus's face went from shock to rage to something else, something darker, something dangerous. He looked at Derek. "You were my brother." Derek finally spoke. "Marcus, man, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, it just happened." "It just happened?" Marcus lunged forward, and it took 3 groomsmen who'd rushed up to hold him back. "You've been screwing my fiancée for 6 months, and it just happened." Guests were flooding into the hallway now. The ceremony area was emptying. Everyone wanted to see what was happening. Phones were out. People were recording. This was about to go viral. Mrs. Chen grabbed Marcus's arm. "Not here, not like this." But Marcus was beyond reason. He shook off his groomsmen and charged at Derek, landing a punch square in Derek's jaw before anyone could stop him. Derek went down hard, blood pouring from his mouth. Jessica screamed. The bridesmaids screamed. Someone yelled to call the police. Marcus stood over Derek, breathing hard. "You want her? You can have her. But you better pray I never see either of you again." And then Marcus walked away, down the hallway, past the shocked guests, out the front door of the mansion at Fairview. He got in his Mercedes and drove away from his own wedding. The venue erupted in chaos. Guests were talking over each other, trying to figure out what had just happened. The wedding planner was crying. Mrs. Chen was on the phone, presumably with Mr. Chen, explaining the disaster. The bridesmaids surrounded Jessica, who had collapsed on the floor in her $45,000 dress, sobbing. And Derek. Derek picked himself up off the floor, wiped the blood from his mouth, and disappeared. He left the venue, got in his car, and drove away. The wedding was over, but the nightmare was just beginning. If you're not subscribed yet, what are you even doing? Hit that subscribe button right now because this story is only halfway done and it gets so much crazier. And seriously, comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I want to hear from every single one of you. Now, let's talk about what happened next. That night, Marcus didn't go home. He checked into a hotel room at the Ritz-Carlton in Uptown Charlotte and proceeded to get blackout drunk. His phone was blowing up with calls and texts from his parents, his siblings, his friends. He ignored all of them. Jessica tried calling him 47 times. He didn't answer once. Derek also tried calling. Marcus blocked his number. Around midnight, Marcus's younger sister finally got through to him. She begged him to come home, to let the family help him. But Marcus told her something that made her blood run cold.
"Tell Mom and Dad I'm fine," Marcus said, his words slurred from alcohol. "And tell Jessica and Derek they better watch their backs." His sister immediately called their parents. Mr. and Mrs. Chen called the police to do a wellness check on Marcus at the Ritz-Carlton. Officers arrived around 1 a.m., found Marcus drunk but not in immediate danger, and left after confirming he wasn't going to harm himself. But they noted in their report that Marcus had made threatening statements about his ex-fiancée and former best friend. The next morning, Jessica woke up in her apartment surrounded by her bridesmaids. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her $45,000 dress was crumpled in a heap on the floor. Her phone had hundreds of notifications. The story had already spread across Charlotte. People were posting videos from the wedding. Gossip blogs were picking it up. The hashtag Charlotte Wedding Drama was trending on Twitter. Jessica's life was ruined. Her reputation destroyed. And worse, she'd lost Marcus. She tried texting him. "Marcus, please. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But please talk to me. I love you. I've always loved you." Marcus finally responded. One word: liar. Derek, meanwhile, was dealing with his own fallout. His business partnership with Marcus was obviously over. His friendship was over. And worse, word was spreading in Charlotte's tight-knit business community about what he'd done. Sleeping with your business partner's fiancée? Career suicide. Derek tried calling Marcus. The calls wouldn't go through. Blocked. He tried going to Marcus's house. The gate was closed. Security had been notified not to let him in. He tried going to the office they shared. His key card didn't work. Marcus had already revoked his access. Derek was cut off. Completely. 3 days after the wedding disaster, Marcus filed a lawsuit against Derek. He was suing to dissolve their business partnership and claiming Derek had breached fiduciary duty. The lawsuit alleged that Derek had used his position in the company to gain access to Marcus's personal life and seduce his fiancée. It was ugly. It was public. And it was just the beginning. Jessica, desperate to fix things, showed up at Marcus's parents' house. Mrs. Chen answered the door, and before Jessica could say a word, Mrs. Chen threw a glass of water in her face. "You are not welcome here," Mrs. Chen said coldly. "You are a disgrace. You destroyed my son. Now get off my property before I call the police." Jessica left, humiliated and broken. But here's where the story takes a dark turn. Because Marcus wasn't just angry. He wasn't just heartbroken. He was plotting revenge. 2 weeks after the wedding disaster, Marcus started following Jessica. He knew her routine. Knew she left for work at 7:30 every morning. Knew she stopped at the same Starbucks. Knew she went to yoga class on Wednesday nights. Knew she got her nails done every other Saturday. Marcus started documenting her movements. Taking photos. Making notes. He told himself he just wanted to know what she was up to. Wanted to see if she was still seeing Derek. But it was more than that. Something dark was growing inside him. And he was following Derek too. Watching his apartment. Noting when he came and went. Seeing that Derek and Jessica were, in fact, still seeing each other. Because here's the twist. After everything imploded, after they destroyed Marcus's life and their own reputations, Jessica and Derek actually stayed together. They figured they'd already lost everything, so why not be together? They were spotted at restaurants. Seen leaving Derek's apartment together. Someone even took a photo of them kissing in a parking garage and posted it online with the caption "No shame." And every time Marcus saw one of these posts, every time someone sent him a photo or a sighting, the rage inside him grew. 1 month after the wedding disaster, Marcus bought a gun. A Glock 19. He told the gun store owner he wanted it for home protection. He passed the background check. He took it home. His sister found out about the gun and immediately called their parents. Mr. Chen confronted Marcus that same night. "What are you planning to do with that gun?" Mr. Chen demanded. "Nothing," Marcus said. "I just want to feel safe." "Safe from what?" Marcus didn't answer. Mr. Chen tried to take the gun, but Marcus refused. "It's legal, Dad. I'm allowed to own it." "You're not in your right mind," Mr. Chen said. "You're angry and hurt and you're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking perfectly clearly," Marcus said. "Clearer than I've thought in months." That night, Mrs. Chen called the police and told them she was worried about her son. That he'd bought a gun and made threatening statements and was obsessed with his ex-fiancée and former best friend. The police took a report but said they couldn't do anything unless Marcus actually broke the law. And Marcus hadn't. Yet. August 2nd, 2019. 7 weeks after the wedding disaster. It was a Friday night. Jessica and Derek were at dinner at a restaurant called the Fig Tree in Elizabeth, one of Charlotte's trendy neighborhoods. They were sitting outside on the patio, sharing a bottle of wine, laughing. They had no idea Marcus was watching them from his car across the street. Marcus had been there for an hour. Just watching. Just waiting. The Glock 19 was in his glove compartment. Loaded. Ready. He kept telling himself he was just going to scare them. Just confront them. Just tell them to their faces what they'd done to him. But deep down, he knew that wasn't true. Jessica and Derek finished their meal around 9 p.m. They paid the bill, left the restaurant, and walked to Derek's car parked in a lot behind the building. It was dark. The lot was mostly empty. Nobody around. Marcus got out of his car. Put the gun in the waistband of his jeans. Covered it with his shirt. And followed them. Jessica and Derek were standing by Derek's car, kissing, completely oblivious. Marcus walked up behind them. "Having fun?" Both of them spun around, shocked. "Marcus," Jessica gasped. "What are you doing here?" Marcus's face was cold. "Empty." "I should ask you the same thing." "Out celebrating?" "Celebrating destroying my life?" Derek stepped in front of Jessica protectively. Marcus, man, we don't want any trouble. You don't want trouble? Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. You've been screwing my fiancée for 6 months and you don't want trouble? I'm sorry, Derek said, hands up. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I am. It was wrong. I was wrong. You were my brother, Marcus said, his voice breaking. I loved you like family. And you betrayed me. I know, Derek said. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life. You're right about that, Marcus said. And then he pulled out the gun. Jessica screamed. Derek froze. Marcus, don't, Derek said, his voice shaking. Please. Don't do this. Marcus raised the gun, pointing it at Derek's chest. His hand was steady. His face was calm. Give me one reason why I shouldn't. Because it won't change anything, Derek said. It won't undo what we did. It'll just destroy your life too. My life is already destroyed, Marcus said. Marcus, please, Jessica sobbed. Please don't. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Marcus turned the gun on Jessica. You said you loved me. You said you wanted to spend your life with me. Was any of it real? Jessica was crying so hard she could barely speak. Yes. Yes, it was real. I did love you. I do love you. Liar, Marcus spat. You don't know what love is. His finger moved to the trigger. And then, sirens. Someone in one of the nearby buildings had seen Marcus pull the gun and called 911. Police were responding. The sirens were getting closer. Marcus hesitated. The gun was still pointed at Jessica. Derek took that moment to rush Marcus, trying to knock the gun away. They struggled. The gun went off. Bang. The shot went wild, hitting Derek's car window. Glass shattered everywhere. Derek and Marcus were on the ground, fighting for the gun. Jessica was screaming. Bang. Another shot. This one hit Derek in the shoulder. He cried out in pain but kept fighting. Marcus was trying to aim the gun at Derek's head when police arrived. Drop the weapon. Drop it now. For officers, guns drawn, surrounding them. Marcus looked up, saw the officers, and slowly released the gun. Derek scrambled away, clutching his bleeding shoulder. Jessica ran to Derek, sobbing. Marcus lay on the ground, hands up, staring at the night sky. It was over. Alright, if you're still not subscribed, I don't know what else I can tell you. This channel brings you the craziest stories you'll ever hear. Subscribe right now. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what you think about this whole situation. Do you feel bad for Marcus? Or did he go too far? Let me know. Marcus Chen was arrested and charged with 2 counts of attempted murder. He was also charged with aggravated assault, carrying a concealed weapon, and stalking. Bail was set at $500,000. His parents posted it the next day. Derek Williams survived. The bullet hit his shoulder, missing any major arteries or bones. He spent 2 days in the hospital and made a full recovery. But the psychological damage was done. He had nightmares. Anxiety. PTSD from thinking he was going to die. Jessica was physically unharmed but emotionally destroyed. She moved back in with her parents. Lost her job because the scandal was affecting the company's reputation. She became a recluse, rarely leaving the house. The media had a field day. Wedding day betrayal ends in shooting. Groom shoots best man who slept with bride. The story went national. CNN covered it. People magazine covered it. It was everywhere. Public opinion was split. Some people sympathized with Marcus, saying Derek and Jessica deserved what they got. That betrayal like that drives people crazy. That Marcus was a victim who snapped. Others said Marcus was a monster. That no matter what Jessica and Derek did, attempted murder is never justified. That he should spend the rest of his life in prison. Marcus's legal team immediately started building a defense based on extreme emotional disturbance. They argued that the betrayal by his fiancée and best friend on his wedding day caused a psychological break. That Marcus wasn't thinking clearly. That he'd been driven temporarily insane by the trauma. The prosecution argued that this wasn't a crime of passion. That Marcus had bought a gun weeks earlier. That he'd been stalking Jessica and Derek. That he'd planned this. That he'd waited for the perfect opportunity. This was premeditated attempted murder. For months, both sides prepared. Depositions were taken. Evidence was gathered. Expert witnesses were hired. Psychiatrists evaluated Marcus and determined he was suffering from severe depression, anxiety, and PTSD from the betrayal. But he was deemed fit to stand trial. Meanwhile, Jessica and Derek's relationship fell apart. The trauma of being shot at, of almost dying, changed everything. They blamed each other. Derek blamed Jessica for starting the affair. Jessica blamed Derek for pursuing her. They fought constantly. Within 3 months, they broke up. Derek moved to Atlanta to start over. New city. New business. New life. Jessica stayed in Charlotte but became a shell of her former self. The confident, ambitious woman who once ran a marketing department was gone. In her place was someone broken, isolated, filled with regret. And Marcus? Marcus spent his days preparing for trial, going to therapy, trying to understand how he'd become someone capable of pulling a trigger. In therapy sessions, Marcus talked about the rage that had consumed him. About how every time he closed his eyes, he saw Jessica and Derek in that bridal suite. About how the betrayal had broken something fundamental inside him. About how he'd fantasized about making them pay. About how, in that parking lot, with the gun in his hand, he'd felt powerful for the first time since his wedding day. His therapist diagnosed him with major depressive disorder and prescribed medication. But the damage was done. Marcus had crossed a line. And there was no going back. 14 months after the incident, in October 2020, the trial finally began. The Mecklenburg County Courthouse was packed. Media from across the state showed up. The gallery was full of Marcus's supporters, Jessica's family, Derek's family, and curious onlookers. Jessica was called to testify first. She walked into that courtroom looking frail and scared. She took the stand and told her story. About the affair. About the wedding day. About Marcus pulling the gun in the parking lot. About thinking she was going to die. The defense attorney cross-examined her. Ms. Morgan, you carried on an affair with Mr. Williams for 6 months while engaged to Mr. Chen, correct? Yes, Jessica whispered, and you never told Mr. Chen about this affair? No. In fact, you were planning to marry Mr. Chen while continuing your relationship with Mr. Williams, weren't you? I don't know. I was confused. You were confused, the attorney repeated. But you weren't too confused to meet Mr. Williams in a hotel room 30 minutes before your wedding ceremony? Jessica started crying. I know what I did was wrong. I know I hurt Marcus. But that doesn't give him the right to try to kill me. Nobody is saying it does, Ms. Morgan. But context matters. The jury needs to understand what drove my client to that parking lot. Derek testified next. He described the shooting in graphic detail. How he saw the gun. How he heard the shots. How he felt the bullet tear through his shoulder. How he thought he was going to die. The prosecution showed photos of Derek's injuries. The bullet wound. The blood. It was gruesome and effective. But on cross-examination, the defense went after Derek hard. Mr. Williams, you were Mr. Chen's best friend, correct? Yes. His business partner? Yes. The best man at his wedding? Yes. And yet you engaged in a sexual relationship with his fiancée behind his back for 6 months? Derek shifted uncomfortably. Yes. Did you feel guilty about that, Mr. Williams? Of course I did. But not guilty enough to stop? Derek didn't answer. Mr. Williams, did you love Miss Morgan? I don't know. You don't know? You risked your friendship, your business, your reputation, and you don't know if you loved her? It was complicated. Complicated, the attorney said. Mr. Williams, you wanted what your best friend had, didn't you? You were jealous of him. His success. His family. His fiancée. And so you took what was his. That's not true, Derek protested. Isn't it? You've known Mr. Chen since college. You've watched him build a life. And you decided you wanted a piece of it. Even if it meant destroying him. The prosecution objected. The judge sustained it. But the damage was done. The defense had painted Derek as a snake. A betrayer. Someone who deserved what he got. Then came the character witnesses. Marcus's family testified about how he'd changed after the betrayal. How he'd gone from a happy, successful man to someone dark and obsessed. How they'd tried to get him help but he'd refused. Friends testified about the friendship between Marcus and Derek. About how close they were. About how the betrayal had been like losing a brother. And then, Marcus took the stand. He walked up calmly, dressed in a dark suit, looking composed. He was sworn in and sat down. The defense attorney started gently. Mr. Chen, can you tell the jury about your relationship with Jessica Morgan? Marcus took a deep breath. I loved her. I thought she was the one. I thought we were going to build a life together. And when did you discover her affair with Derek Williams? On our wedding day. 30 minutes before the ceremony. I found them together in the bridal suite. How did that make you feel? Destroyed, Marcus said, his voice cracking. Everything I believed in, everything I thought was real, it all shattered in that moment. What did you do after you discovered the affair? I left. I drove away. I tried to process what had happened. But I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together. Every time I tried to sleep, I had nightmares. I couldn't eat. Couldn't work. Couldn't function. Did you seek help? I tried. I saw a therapist. She prescribed medication. But nothing helped. The anger just kept growing. Tell the jury about the night of August 2nd. Marcus looked down. I'd been following them. I know that's wrong. But I couldn't stop myself. I needed to see them. Needed to know if they were still together. And when I saw them at that restaurant, laughing, kissing, like nothing had happened, like they hadn't destroyed my life, something inside me snapped. What happened in the parking lot? I confronted them. I wanted them to acknowledge what they'd done. To admit they'd destroyed me. But Derek got defensive. Protective of Jessica. And I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled the gun. Did you intend to kill them? Marcus paused. Long silence. I don't know. In that moment, I wanted them to feel what I felt. I wanted them to hurt like I was hurting. But when I had the gun pointed at them, when I saw the fear in their eyes, I hesitated. And then Derek rushed me and the gun went off. Do you regret what happened? Every day, Marcus said, tears streaming down his face now. I'm not that person. I've never been violent. But they broke me. They took everything from me and broke me. The prosecution's cross-examination was brutal. They hammered Marcus on the fact that he'd bought the gun weeks earlier. That he'd been stalking them. That he'd planned this. Mr. Chen, you claim you didn't know if you intended to kill them. But you brought a loaded gun to that parking lot, didn't you? Yes. You followed them to that restaurant? Yes. You waited until they were alone? Yes. You pulled the gun and pointed it at them? Yes. You pulled the trigger? Yes, but... No buts, Mr. Chen. You made a choice to bring a weapon. To follow them. To confront them. And to shoot Mr. Williams. Those were all choices, weren't they? Marcus looked defeated. Yes. And Ms. Morgan and Mr. Williams, they didn't have a choice when you pointed that gun at them, did they? They couldn't choose to walk away. They couldn't choose to be safe. You took that choice from them. I know, Marcus whispered. The prosecutor turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, we all understand heartbreak. We all understand betrayal. But we don't all try to murder people because of it. Mr. Chen made a series of calculated decisions that culminated in him shooting an unarmed man. That's not temporary insanity. That's attempted murder. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The closing arguments were passionate on both sides. The defense painted Marcus as a broken man driven to the edge by unimaginable betrayal. The prosecution painted him as a dangerous criminal who took the law into his own hands. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they came back, the courtroom was silent. You could hear a pin drop. On the count of attempted murder of Derek Williams, how do you find the defendant? Guilty. Jessica gasped. Marcus's mother started crying. On the count of attempted murder of Jessica Morgan, how do you find the defendant? Not guilty. Confused murmurs in the courtroom. The jury had split the charges. They believed Marcus intended to kill Derek, but not Jessica. On the count of aggravated assault, how do you find the defendant? Guilty. Marcus stood still, face expressionless, as the verdicts were read. Sentencing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. During that time, both sides prepared impact statements and sentencing recommendations. Derek wrote a victim impact statement describing how the shooting had changed his life. How he had nightmares. How he couldn't be around loud noises. How he'd lost his business, his reputation, his sense of safety. Jessica wrote one too, even though Marcus had been found not guilty of attempting to murder her. She described the terror of having a gun pointed at her. The guilt she carried for causing the situation. The pain of knowing she destroyed a good man. Marcus's family begged the judge for leniency. They submitted letters from therapists, character witnesses, friends. They argued that Marcus had no prior criminal record. That he'd been driven to temporary insanity by extreme circumstances. That he deserved a chance at rehabilitation. The prosecution asked for the maximum sentence. 25 years in prison. Before we get to the sentencing, make sure you're subscribed to The Only Witness. We're almost at the end of this crazy story, but you don't want to miss how it ends. Hit that subscribe button. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Seriously, I love hearing from you all. Okay, let's finish this story. December 4th, 2020. Sentencing day. Marcus Chen stood before Judge Patricia Morrison in a packed courtroom. His parents sat in the front row, holding hands, praying. Jessica was there, sitting in the back. Derek was there too, sitting on the opposite side. Judge Morrison had reviewed all the evidence, all the statements, all the psychological evaluations. And now it was time to hand down Marcus's fate. Mr. Chen, Judge Morrison began, looking directly at him. I've presided over many cases in my career, but few have been as complex as this one. What Ms. Morgan and Mr. Williams did to you was unconscionable. The betrayal you experienced was profound and devastating. I can understand how it broke you. Marcus's mother squeezed her husband's hand, hoping for mercy. However, the judge continued, pain does not give us the right to harm others. Betrayal does not justify violence. You made a choice to arm yourself. You made a choice to stalk them. You made a choice to pull that trigger. And Mr. Williams nearly died because of those choices. Marcus stood silent, accepting his fate. The jury found you guilty of attempted murder and aggravated assault. These are serious crimes. And while I take into account your lack of prior criminal history and the extreme emotional disturbance you experienced, I cannot ignore the severity of your actions. The courtroom held its breath. I hereby sentence you to 15 years in the North Carolina Department of Corrections, with the possibility of parole after serving 10 years. Additionally, upon your release, you will serve 5 years of supervised probation and complete anger management and psychological counseling. Marcus's mother broke down sobbing. His father's face was stone. Jessica put her head in her hands. Derek showed no emotion. 15 years. Marcus would be 47 years old when he became eligible for parole. His youth, his career, his future, all gone. The bailiffs led Marcus away in handcuffs. As he passed his parents, he mouthed, "I'm sorry." His mother reached for him but couldn't touch him. And just like that, it was over. Marcus Chen began serving his sentence at a medium-security prison in North Carolina. For the first few months, he was in shock. The reality of what he'd done, where he'd ended up, hit him hard. He spent 23 hours a day in his cell during intake processing. He barely ate. Barely slept. But slowly, Marcus started to come back to himself. He enrolled in the prison's education program. Started taking college courses. Worked in the prison library. Attended therapy sessions twice a week. Started writing letters to his family. And, most surprisingly, Marcus started writing to victims of betrayal and infidelity. His story had gone viral, and he received hundreds of letters from people who'd experienced similar pain. People who understood his rage. People who were grateful he was speaking about the darkness that betrayal can create. Marcus started a blog from prison called From Broken to Better, where he wrote about his journey from rage to redemption. He was honest about his crime. He didn't make excuses. But he tried to help others understand that revenge never heals wounds, it only creates new ones. His blog gained a following. Thousands of people read it. Therapists started sharing it with clients. Support groups used his writing in their sessions. Marcus became an unlikely advocate for mental health awareness and anger management. From behind bars, he was helping people avoid the path he'd taken. Jessica, meanwhile, struggled for years after the trial. The guilt consumed her. She blamed herself for everything, for the affair, for Marcus's breakdown, for Derek getting shot, for ruining multiple lives. She went through intensive therapy. Was diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety. Attempted suicide twice. Spent time in psychiatric facilities. But eventually, slowly, Jessica started to heal. She moved out of Charlotte, started over in a small town in the mountains. Changed her name legally. Got a job at a nonprofit helping domestic violence survivors. Found purpose in helping others who'd experienced trauma. She never dated again. Never married. The guilt of what she'd done to Marcus never fully left her. But she learned to live with it. To channel it into something productive. To try to make amends by helping others. Derek rebuilt his life in Atlanta. Started a new real estate company. Became successful again. Got married to a woman he met at a charity event. Had 2 kids. From the outside, he looked like he'd moved on completely. But Derek carried scars too. Physical scars from the bullet wound. Psychological scars from nearly dying. And moral scars from what he'd done to his best friend. In interviews years later, Derek admitted that not a day went by where he didn't think about Marcus. Where he didn't regret the affair. Where he didn't wish he could go back and make different choices. "I destroyed my best friend's life," Derek said in one interview. "And I'll carry that guilt until the day I die." Marcus's parents visited him in prison every month without fail. They never missed a visit. They still loved their son, despite everything. They watched him transform from a broken, rage-filled man into someone who was genuinely trying to atone for his crime. In 2026, after serving 6 years, Marcus came up for his first parole hearing. He'd been a model prisoner. Completed multiple educational programs. Had no disciplinary infractions. His therapist testified that he'd made remarkable progress in managing his anger and processing his trauma. Derek and Jessica both submitted statements. Surprisingly, both said they didn't oppose his parole. Derek wrote that he believed Marcus had been punished enough. That he'd changed. that he deserved a second chance. Jessica wrote that she hoped Marcus could find peace and move forward with his life. That she took responsibility for her role in what happened. That she prayed he could forgive himself. The parole board denied his request. They said he needed to serve more time. That 6 years wasn't enough for attempted murder. Marcus accepted the decision with grace. He told his parents he understood. That he'd use the time to continue growing and healing. In 2028, Marcus came up for parole again. This time, after serving 8 years, the board granted it. He would be released with strict conditions: mandatory therapy, anger management, no contact with Jessica or Derek, and regular check-ins with his parole officer. On a cold morning in January 2029, Marcus Chen walked out of prison a free man. He was 40 years old. He'd lost 8 years of his life. His 20s and most of his 30s gone. His parents were waiting for him at the gate. They hugged him, cried with him, took him home. Marcus moved back in with his parents temporarily while he figured out his next steps. He couldn't work in real estate anymore, his felony conviction made that impossible. But he started speaking at churches, community centers, and universities about the dangers of unchecked anger and the importance of mental health. His talks were powerful. Raw. Honest. He didn't sugarcoat what he'd done. He owned his crime completely. But he also talked about the path from rage to redemption. About how betrayal can break you if you let it. About how seeking revenge only creates more victims. Young people, especially young men dealing with heartbreak and betrayal, connected with his message. Marcus became a voice for processing pain in healthy ways instead of destructive ones. 3 years after his release, in 2032, Marcus published a book called The Gun I Should Never Have Bought. It was a memoir about his journey from successful businessman to attempted murderer to advocate. The book became a bestseller. Half of all proceeds went to victims of gun violence. The other half went to mental health organizations. Marcus didn't profit from his crime. He used his platform to try to prevent others from making his mistakes. By 2033, Marcus had rebuilt a life. Not the life he'd planned. Not the life he'd had before. But a meaningful life nonetheless. He'd turned his worst moment into a mission to help others. He never married. Never had kids. The capacity for romantic love had been burned out of him that day at the mansion at Fairview. But he found purpose. Found peace. Found a way to live with what he'd done. Jessica heard about Marcus's book. She bought a copy, read it cover to cover in one sitting, and cried through most of it. She sent him a letter through his publisher. She didn't expect a response, and she didn't get one. But she needed him to know that she was sorry. That she'd spent every day since that wedding trying to be a better person. That she hoped he'd found happiness. Marcus never responded. Not because he was still angry. But because some chapters need to stay closed. Some doors need to remain shut. Some forgiveness happens silently, from a distance. Derek saw Marcus on TV once, giving a talk at a university. Derek watched from his living room in Atlanta, his wife and kids playing nearby. He listened to Marcus talk about betrayal and rage and redemption. And Derek realized that Marcus had done something Derek never could. He'd taken full responsibility and transformed his pain into purpose. Derek never reached out to Marcus. He knew Marcus didn't want to hear from him. And honestly, Derek didn't know what he would say. Sorry I slept with your fiancée and ruined your life seemed insufficient. So Derek just lived with his guilt. Tried to be a better husband, a better father, a better man. Tried to learn from his mistakes. Tried to never take loyalty for granted again. In 2035, 13 years after the shooting, a journalist did a Where Are They Now piece on everyone involved in the infamous Charlotte wedding disaster. Marcus was 43, living alone in a modest apartment, working as a counselor at a mental health clinic and speaking at events across the country. Jessica was 44, still living under her new name in the mountains, working with domestic violence survivors, finding purpose in helping others heal. Derek was 43, successful again in business, married with kids, carrying quiet guilt but moving forward. None of them had contact with each other. None of them wanted to. Some stories don't have neat endings. Some wounds don't fully heal. Some relationships can't be repaired. But all three had learned the same lesson: actions have consequences. Betrayal destroys. Revenge destroys more. And the only real path forward is taking responsibility, seeking help, and trying to do better. The wedding that never happened became a cautionary tale. A reminder that one moment of weakness, whether it's an affair, an act of rage, or a pulled trigger, can change everything forever. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to The Only Witness because we bring you stories like this every single week. Real stories. Real consequences. Real lessons. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. And let me know what you think. Did Marcus deserve his sentence? Do you have sympathy for him, or do you think he got off easy? What about Jessica and Derek? Do they deserve forgiveness? Let me know your thoughts. This story teaches us something important. When you're betrayed, when you're hurt, when your world falls apart, you have a choice. You can let the rage consume you. You can seek revenge. You can destroy lives, including your own. Or you can find a healthier path. Therapy. Support groups. Time to heal. Processing your pain without harming others. Marcus chose revenge, and it cost him 8 years of his life. It traumatized multiple people. It destroyed his future. Was the betrayal horrible? Absolutely. Did Jessica and Derek deserve to feel consequences? Yes. But attempted murder wasn't the answer. It never is. If you're going through heartbreak right now, if someone betrayed you, if you're feeling rage like Marcus felt, please get help. Talk to a therapist. Call a crisis hotline. Reach out to friends and family. Don't let anger turn you into someone you're not. Don't throw your life away over someone who wasn't worth it in the first place. Marcus would tell you the same thing. He's spent years trying to undo one moment of rage. Trying to atone for pulling that trigger. Living with the knowledge that he could have killed 2 people over a broken heart. Don't be Marcus. Be better. Choose healing over revenge. Choose therapy over violence. Choose life over destruction. And to everyone watching who's never experienced betrayal like this, count yourself lucky. Because the pain Marcus felt that day on his wedding day, that kind of pain changes you. It rewires your brain. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about love and trust and loyalty. Be kind to people going through heartbreak. Check on your friends who are hurting. Don't judge them for their pain. Just help them find healthy ways to process it. This is The Only Witness, signing off. Thank you for being part of this community. Subscribe if you haven't already. Comment where you're watching from. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. And remember, every action has a consequence. Choose wisely. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there. And if you're hurting, get help. You're not alone.